You probably aren't saving enough money right now. And I know that because 1, the average American spends 95% of their income every year, and 2, you probably wouldn't have clicked on this video unless you wanted to save more. And if you aren't saving enough, you might never reach financial freedom. But the good news is that it's actually pretty easy to save more money, and I'm going to help you do it using the F.E.T.C.H system. Each letter stands for a powerful way to save more money, and if you put them all together, you might be able to retire a decade faster. And I'll prove it to you at the end of this video. And I know that the F.E.T.C.H system works because I'm using all 5 of these strategies to reach financial freedom before I turn 30 years old. And in the next year, I'm planning to save about 80% of my income. So let's start with the very first way to save more money. And I've actually been thinking about this a lot lately because a couple of weeks ago, I grabbed a smoothie with one of my friends. And the smoothie shop is right next to the grocery store, so I hung around a few extra minutes to help her do a little grocery shopping. And it was really interesting to see someone else do their grocery shopping. Because when I go grocery shopping, I know exactly what I'm going to buy, I find it as fast as possible, and I don't even look at anything else. But shopping with my friend was completely different. She went up and down every single aisle and just grabbed anything that caught her eye. So what I realized is that even though I am a very large man who has to eat a ton of calories just to survive, I probably spend about a quarter as much money on groceries as my friend does. 90% of the things that are in a grocery store are totally unnecessary. You could probably cut your grocery bill in half just by comparing prices and using a grocery list. And I haven't even talked about the cost of eating out or buying an overpriced coffee, which might make an even bigger difference. So that's why one of the easiest ways to save more money in this next year is by spending less money on food, which is the first letter of the F.E.T.C.H system. Most people could literally save thousands of dollars per year if they wanted to. And by the way, if you are interested in how I save about 75% of my income every year and why I'm on track to retire before I turn 30, I made a complete breakdown of all of my income and expenses that I put in the video description. But as easy as it is to spend less money on food, there's another way to save money that is even easier. Because even though the average family spends about $5,500 per year on this expense, you could spend $0 instead. To prove the power of this expense, I want you to think about what you do when you're bored. Everyone fills their time with something. Some people read books, some people go hiking, some people watch TV, and some people go to the gym. You get the idea. But what's important to realize is that every activity has a cost. But the cost of throwing a frisbee in your backyard is very different from the cost of playing golf on a country club. And this is sort of obvious, but you're going to save more money if you do activities that have lower costs. So when I'm bored, I just watch YouTube videos. This activity is almost free. But it's not just about minimizing cost. Every activity also has a different benefit. So if you really want to save more money, do things that have a positive return. Do things that have a higher benefit than they have a cost. This is why I watch a lot of educational YouTube videos and read educational newsletters about how to make a better YouTube channel. Not only is this activity effectively free, but it also helps me get more people to smash the like and subscribe button. But unless a high-cost activity has a huge benefit, you might want to change what you do with your time. Most people really could save hundreds and maybe even thousands of dollars per year just by spending less on entertainment. And that's why entertainment is the second step of the F.E.T.C.H system. This is a totally optional expense, so it should be one of the easiest ways to save more money. But if you want to save a truly insane amount of money, we have to talk about bigger expenses. But whenever I talk about this next expense, a lot of people tell me that they can't spend less on it. But I think you might be surprised. So a couple of days ago, I was talking to one of the trainers at the gym I go to, and I always see this guy riding around on a little electrical skateboard. When I asked him about it, he said something that I think a lot more people need to hear. He said most of the gasoline is just burned by starting and stopping the car, so why would I drive a car? It's just a waste of money. So by riding his electrical skateboard, he's probably saving at least $1,000 per year on gasoline, and maybe more than that. He's recognized something that a lot more people need to understand. The cost of driving is not just the cost of buying a car. It turns out that just driving a car is really expensive. Of course, you'll save even more money if you never have to buy a car in the first place, which is what I'm doing. But this can be really difficult for some people. But if you just drove less, you could still save over $1,000 per year. And you could do that by walking, biking, carpooling, using public transport, or just taking less frequent trips. There are so many ways to drive less. And that's why the third letter in the F.E.T.C.H system stands for transportation. This is a super powerful way to save more money. The next expense probably won't save you as much money as transportation, but I still wanted to include it because it's just so easy to spend less money on this. I mean, it kind of shocks me that people spend much money on this at all. I actually don't even track what I spend on this category because it's such a small part of my overall budget that I just treat it as another miscellaneous expense. But I was talking to one of my friends and he spends $250 to $300 per month on this, which absolutely blew my mind. And when I looked it up, I saw that the average person spends $1,300 per year on this, which just doesn't make sense to me. So I didn't think I'd have to talk about this expense, but I guess I do. I'm talking about clothes. I'm pretty sure my entire wardrobe probably didn't cost much more than $1,000, but apparently the average person spends more than that in a single year. And if that's what the average person spends, then you just know that there are some people who spend 10 times that. But I really just don't get this. Clothes last a long time. I've had some of the exact same clothes since I was in high school. Families with kids might have to spend more money on this, but it's still pretty easy to find cheap clothes. So if you're spending thousands of dollars per year on this, you can probably find some massive savings. And that's why clothes is the fourth way to save money in the F.E.T.C.H system. So before I move on to the final super easy way to save money and how you could retire a decade faster just by making some small changes, I wanted to share a lesson that I wish I learned when I was younger. This is a little counterintuitive, but it's actually easier to save more money by reducing your small expenses than it is by reducing your big expenses. That's because your biggest expenses, like rent and your car, are usually pretty difficult to change. They might be your biggest costs, but they might be difficult to reduce. At the end of the day, you still need a place to live, and you still need a way to get from point A to point B. So for most people, it's actually easier to reduce their small expenses instead, because you don't need 7 streaming services or a morning coffee from Starbucks in the same way that you need a place to live. And even better, you can usually start saving more money immediately. Just cancel your subscriptions and start brewing your own coffee. Now, that does not mean that you shouldn't try to save more money on your big expenses too. But if you're trying to save more money in this next year, it might be smart to start with small, super easy ways to save money. And there is one more easy way to save money that I wanted to talk about, but I was a little hesitant to include it. But every year, right about now, there are millions of people who sign up for expensive gym memberships, even though they probably won't get much value out of them. And do not get me wrong, staying healthy is extremely important. Being healthy is a lot more important than just saving a few bucks. But staying healthy doesn't have to be expensive. It's pretty easy to stay healthy for free. And if all you have is a yoga mat, good running shoes, and maybe a few weights, you can probably stay healthy on your own. And that's why the last way to save money as part of the F.E.T.C.H system is on your health. So let me quickly show you how you could retire a decade faster just by making some of these small, easy changes. To do this, I'm going to have to make some assumptions about what you spend and what you save. I'll try to pick some reasonable numbers, but it should be pretty easy to use your own numbers if you want to follow along. Let's say you currently spend around $50,000 per year and save about $600 per month. I think that's a pretty realistic estimate for most people. The rule of thumb is that you would want $1.25 million in savings before quitting your job, and maybe a little more. If you invested your $600 per month at a 7% return, it would take 38 years to become financially free. But now, let's say you make some of the changes that I've just talked about. I've talked about 5 different ways that you could save more money in this video, so let's say you save an extra $500 per month, which I think is totally doable. Now you would be saving $1,100 per month instead of $600 per month, which I think is pretty cool. But even better, you would only be spending $44,000 per year, which means you would need way less money to retire. Using the exact same rule of thumb, you would only need about $1.1 million to retire. So not only would you be saving more money, you would also need $150,000 less dollars to quit your job, which is why you would be on track to retire after just 28 years. So it is absolutely possible to retire 10 years faster just by making some small, easy changes. But nothing I said will matter at all unless you take action. So I want you to choose at an absolute minimum 2 of the 5 strategies that I just talked about and commit to saving more money on them. And let me know in the comments which of the saving strategies you're going to use so I can make more helpful videos for you in the future. And earlier, I mentioned that in this next year, I'm planning to save about 80% of my income, which is why I'll be on track to retire before I turn 30 years old. If you want to see exactly how I do that, you just need to check out this video right here, where I explain how I spend my money to retire so quickly.